Good evening and welcome to The Square. Tonight's conversation is the 14th edition of Burning Issues edition, and we're happy to have this edition here with the resident Square panelists. As you know, this show is every end of the month, towards the end of the month, and we usually have it when you, the viewers, tell us what you want to see debated and discussed on The Square, specifically with the Square resident panelists. Tonight we have topics that you put forward to us on our social media feed, and we're going to talk about government expenditure, wasteful and irregular expenditure, based on the Auditor General's report that was presented to Parliament in May of this year. We're also going to look at public service restructuring. This is in a bid to overhaul the entire public service sector in Rwanda and to improve on service delivery. We're also going to look at Car Free Day. It's finally back. Very happy to know that it's finally back, and look at what other activities during COVID-19 may also resume, such as Car Free Day. My name is Diana Mpisi. I am joined on The Square by our resident hosts, our resident panelists, Brennan Amata. Great to have you.
Thank you, Diana.
Good to see you tonight.
Good to see you too.
Before we kick off, we're just going to get onto our tweets, and we're going to start with some of the tweets that you put forward before we start the show. And the first tweet we have is from Fiona, and Fiona says that, and this is in regards to the state expenditure, government expenditure, and she's giving a couple of points for us and our viewers to note. She says, first, setting key performance indicators, KPIs, and have a monthly review with serious actions in case not fulfilled. 2, she states that with expenditures, we need first to understand the process of how projects are reviewed before being financed and how the government spends. And she says this is why she couldn't wait for the show tonight. Our other tweet coming in, also on the topics that I mentioned we're going to tackle tonight with the Square resident panelists, is again from Fiona, and she states that if this will increase accountability, good use of resources and productivity, but still, thinking of society, how are those people going to survive out there? And in this case, she's talking about the public service restructuring and the layoff of hundreds of civil servants that is ongoing in a bid to improve service delivery in Rwanda. We also have another tweet coming in from her, which states that in terms of the activities that need to resume, such as Car Free Day, Fiona states that, and if you can have this on the screen, the others need to resume. In fact, there's some that I think need to resume. And she states, such as driving schools and license tests, the number of staff reporting at the office should also increase, public transportation. At the end of the day, the issue is with guidelines not being respected. These are some of the tweets that have come in, and we are going to tackle them. We're going to try and dissect and discuss and offer solutions to what your viewers have put forward. And with that said, I will kick off on the first topic. But before I do, I'd like to welcome Charles Herbert. Great to have you on the show.
Same here, Diana. How are you?
Good. We almost thought you wouldn't make it, but glad to see you.
Same here.
Great.
Bana, you all right?
All right, thank you.
Is there any midweek highlights that you'd like to tackle before we kick off?
Chogam, I think, the big announcement around Chogam, the private sector especially has been waiting for the date. It allows a bit of planning around it. We're excited. It's a great opportunity. And I think that, when it was postponed, there was a lot of misinformation around it. So it's good that finally the record is out and, people know it's happening.
Exactly. Yeah. Happening in Rwanda.
Yes,
the week of June 21st, 2021.
Yeah.
Great. Charles, anything you'd like to highlight this week?
Yeah, just I need to apologize to our viewers as I'm not wearing Made in Rwanda today. But my sweater was bought in Rwanda.
That's fair enough. Fair enough. So we're going to start tackling the first topic, which is to do with government expenditure. And if you'll allow me to just read a couple of figures, according to the 2019 Auditor General report from the Office of the Auditor General, there's been a significant increase by 51% in irregular and wasteful expenditure by government agencies. And as of Monday, September 2014, it was Monday 14th, 2020, managers of 56 public institutions have started appearing before the Public Accounts Committee. This is a part of the public hearing processes to understand this mismanagement as stated in the AG's report. And in addition to that, the Auditor General stated that as of this year, his recommendations have deteriorated by 5% in terms of being implemented. We've had the AG on the Square before, Mr. Biraro on the Square before, and we've tried to tell him and listen to him and ask him, Why is it year in, year out we have this issue when it comes to, fund wasteful expenditure of funds, irregular expenditure of government funds at the cost of the public? And my question to you, Charles and Berna, and also to our viewers, is one: what is the answer? What is the solution? I know there's no single bullet to this. I'd like to first start by asking, is prosecution an answer? Is prosecution a solution? And in which ways can these managers of these institutions really implement corporate governance policies to better how they manage these institutions? And if you can just first start by asking the big question and trying to answer it, is prosecution the answer? At the end of the day, do you think if people are persecuted, there'll be more accountability and more care when it comes to spending these budgets set out in government? None of us are civil servants, so it's not easy to.
It's a good thing.
So it's not easy to to give opinions from the outside looking in. But as part of the show, it's something that we've tackled a lot of time. What do you think is the answer? Is prosecution the answer? Brenna, I'll start with you.
No, I definitely don't think so, because the other unwritten rule is that rules are written to be broken. So persecution is not always the answer, but in a way it helps in terms of piling pressure on whoever is involved. I think the principle should be encouraging civil servants to, one, look at the ethics and try to take up the responsibility by choice. Do the right thing by choice instead of, but that, of course, doesn't always happen, and that's where I guess persecution will come in. But I feel that what we see most of the time around wasteful expenditure is a symptom. You have to look at public service and look at incentives and look at pay in public service. And then look at recruitment. And look at how, once you're recruited, how long you stay and why you stay. Now, let me first look at incentives around the public service. Today, if you look at the pay, I don't think it's as good. Some will say, well, on average, they're paid better. I don't think so. If you're going to get skilled people in public service, they have to be well compensated for their skills. The arguments around you have to be patriotic don't work. And we see that. It is easy to say, oh, I'm being patriotic and I'm in public service. But then the reality on the ground will hit, and then that's how you'll see some of these issues emerge. So I think compensation, and on the other hand, it's difficult if you're a developing country. There's a lot of pressure on the national budget, so they cannot be paid as much. But I feel that there's room for incentives that could encourage public servants to behave better. Because we have to remember, at the end of the day, people are trying to feed their families, people are trying to get a better life, for their families. So, for instance, if there is a scheme around housing, again, not, what's the estate in Yarton? Not the Vision City kind of housing estate, yes, because very few civil servants actually earn within the bracket. The installment payment that they were expecting, very few.
So basically, when it comes to, you think these are some of the solutions that can better how projects, mismanagement of funds can be bettered?
Yeah, because it's a function of mainly, in my view, two things. One, there's incompetence, which is related to recruitment, how people actually get these jobs. Mm-hmm. Is it because of political connections, or is it because they're actually competent? Yeah? Mm-hmm. So there's that. There's incompetence, where you have people with no experience at all being given big budgets to manage. Now, one will argue that usually they will appoint a technician to do the work, but if the overall boss doesn't have an understanding of budget execution, issues of corporate governance, then you can be sure that there will be wasteful expenditure because they will not even be able to detect. I can tell you from my small office, it's not easy to read financial reports or work with accountants, So if it's public service, you can imagine the scale. So part of the problem is the recruitment. The other one is around incentives within public service. I feel that if you build an incentive structure that gives some bit of comfort to public servants to, one, live comfortably. They can take their children to good schools, and that is subsidized by government. Because, look at most schools today. I'll talk of one school that everybody keeps talking about, Wellspring. The fees at Wellspring are well above what most civil servants earn. But most of them want to take their children there. Look at Green Hills. How much it costs to, take your child through Green Hills. Most of them aspire to take their children there. So how do they actually top up? Can we come up with an incentive that at least subsidizes, for instance, some of these things? Because then it is no guarantee that you will reduce corruption or it will stop, but at least it helps, And also when it comes to holding people to account, you'll say, we are providing ABCD. We have provided ABCD for you. You know.
The bare minimum you can do is really do your job.
Yeah.
I think I like where you're coming from. You're talking about the human aspect of this mismanagement of government funds, of state finances. But I also think what's worth talking about, and this was mentioned in the Auditor General's report, is the issue of mindset. Most of the managers of these institutions just have a mindset whereby they undermine or ignore or don't understand the importance of providing financial reports. So this is something either they just ignore or they do not prioritize. How do we? Because I understand what you're saying, but there's also the issue of other than taking care of them so they can do their job, there are people who are competent, who are probably passionate about their job, and they're heading these institutions, but they don't understand the importance of putting it there. This is how we have actually been spending government monies. So I want us to also understand the mindset at the very top, the leadership of these institutions keep on undermining year in and year out the issue when it comes to outlining budgets spent. This is an issue that I think we also need to tackle.
Well, you might also ask that why would it go on for quite some time? Mm-hmm. Because we have institutions that continue to do badly and nothing happens, whether it's change of management or it doesn't happen. So in other words, it's like we only get to talk about this when the Auditor General's report is out, and then you have the PAC meetings, which, of course, generate a lot of interest. But you would expect that if given chance, twice, thrice, then some action should be taken. Now it takes forever. Now, we know for a fact that it's difficult to actually investigate and persecute corruption because it's subtle. People are getting, sharper at these things. It's difficult. But if we look at, if we take, for instance, Imihigo as an example, we know that there are issues in institutions where people cannot easily score based on the reality of, the performance of this person, because they fear that if they score badly, someone will take it personal, So in the end, you'll find that the score is 190, and someone is just trying to keep peace. But when you go to the same institution, everybody will tell you, everybody knows that this person has a problem or is incompetent. So I feel that the office of the ombudsman could do more in some of these things to actually go behind the scenes and try to help the Auditor General's.
I agree with you, but I feel like we're focusing too much on the human element, the human
they
beings.
Are human beings.
I know they're human beings, but these institutions, I think more than ever, they need to be really tough systems in place. The
systems are there.
I know, but they need to be toughened up. They need to be measures. They need to be repercussions. Because those human beings and those faults you're describing will always be there. We can't keep on saying more incentives for them. Let's do this. Let's do that. with the hope that they will actually, come correct and stop wasting this money. I think the systems need to be, I don't know if it's sharpened or honed. There need to be some element of serious repercussions. We kept on saying this on the show that, PAC, the Public Accounts Committee, does it really have teeth? You come there and you apologize and you say, I'll do better next year. And the same human being you're describing with more incentives keeps on doing the same thing. Charles, what's your take on this?
I'll take it from the last point that you said. One of the oldest English adages is barking dogs seldom bite. I'm very good friends with Auditor General, and I did say that on air the last time he was here. He bought me a bottle of wine for saying that.
Did you declare that?
But that's just a hyperbole. But I think that's the point. Barking dogs seldom bite. So it's very, very easy to get away from the bold, biting teeth of the Public Accounts Committee in as long as you're apologetic. You get before the Public Accounts Committee and say, I am sorry, next time when I come back here, you will not see the same thing that you have said. Now, the likelihood of you being there next time when Public Accounts Committee is summoning your institution is probably 0.5 out of 10. So you will not be there, there will be somebody else.
Who's saying the same thing, though?
Who is apologizing again? And no, he'll add one more story. He or she will say, it is my predecessor.
That's problem, yeah.
So it brings down to it brings into play my second point around the high turnover of people in very high positions of responsibility. If you look at and I'll just handpick on education because it's one of the areas where you've had high turnover of ministers, Reb, HEC, and I sort of run out of names and timings of acronyms and individuals. In one sentence, you put them up, you fill up Agaseche. But therein lies a problem. But then the other thing is really around governance. And Bana, both of Bana and Diana touched on it. And it's really around when you are in a position of responsibility, it boils down to the checks and balances. So, and I'll give a typical example of a director general of an institution, because throughout the last week or two, the people who have been brought to question for the Public Accounts Committee, and it's not only about the last week or two, it's the previous year and the previous years, are heads of these public institutions. And then you ask yourself, in terms of governance hierarchy, all these, I think the acronym they use is Government Business Enterprises, GBEs. Yes. They have boards. Where are the boards of these institutions? Where is Rwanda Governance Board in regards to bringing to account these boards? Why are we seeing the Rwanda Governance Board coming out with 2 sledgehammers to hit Rayon Sport hard when year in, year out, WASAC is making taxpayers lose money?
Or REG, for that matter.
RSSB. REG,
I think those were the big institutions that were outlined in the report. Yes.
I would expect that you discipline your own child. The Rwanda Governance Board is a government institution. It should start by its own institutions before stretching its hand far out to go to MTN money and Skoll money and Primus money that is in Rayon Sport. So I'm fully convinced it's...
Did you think that sort of outrage or attention to Rayon Sport was misplaced? It should have been...
No. It's not misplaced at all. It's not misplaced at all. But I would expect the same wrath and the same whatever comes out with the fellow governments, fellow government institutions.
Yeah.
So that's the other side of looking at it. But also, you see, when it does not pain, it does not hurt. And of late, I have been reading in media and here and there that if you've caused government a loss of a certain amount, they'll make you pay it back. And then you did allude to corruption, but the issues we have been facing and the Auditor General has been emphasizing so much is around mismanagement. One of my favorite phrases of the Auditor General is value for money audits, where you spent $10 million for argument's sake, can you expect $10 million worth of a job? Now, to what extent do we have internal capacity to appraise value for money? How do you expect the head of RURA, who manages billions of dollars, to earn 2 million francs? I am reliably informed that the head of RSSB earns peanuts. Excuse my hyperbole, it's extremely deliberate. How do you head the largest money-making institution in the country and you earn less than a guy who collects tickets in some private company?
So are you saying
It should be patriotic?
It is.
Should be patriotic.
No.
So Charlie, are you saying that
yeah.
this is really cause for temptation? We need to review these payment structures?
No, that is insinuation towards corruption. I'm referring to incentive.
I still don't get how, if someone earns a certain amount and they're managing a humongous portfolio, this gives them leeway to mismanage funds.
Because
you need...
Connect that dot for me, please.
You cannot work in an institution and ably deliver if you have no incentive. Gone are the days when the only incentive was to be serving your government. And it's a hard truth. Gone are those days. Whether you like it or not, gone are those days.
So do you think...
a person in a position of responsibility who is running an institution that is raking in loads of money has to be very well incentivized to ensure that there is no leakage in that money. That's number one. And number two, that institution continues to make more money.
So very quickly, because we have to move to our next point. Like I keep on saying, this is a solution-oriented show. Brenna, I heard from you, and you I think you're both saying the same thing. But you talked about the human aspect. Because the people making these mistakes are human beings in this institution. So, ensure competence is a key aspect of recruitment and that sort of thing. And Charles, you're talking about at the very top, these leaders who are managing these portfolios worth billions of francs or even millions of dollars. Should be well incentivized.
Yes, absolutely.
This is a solution whereby possibly we won't be seeing this sort of mistakes in the
future. But I also want to make another point along the same lines.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about value for money audits, just because, and I'll give a practical example. If government is going to procure the services of a contractor to build a road, if government is going to buy a building, if government is going to procure the services of a private contractor to run a fleet of cars, and the other day there was a big, we talked about this a few shows ago, about people who got into trouble because government had bought a building at a certain price. If they have saved government a colossal sum in rent that would have been money drawn down a drop down a pit, or for that matter, Diana has gotten a contract to supply fertilizer, but that whole process has saved government a whole sum of money. Let us avoid a situation where we are petty, so to speak. Let us look at the bigger picture.
True.
Yes.
True.
Yeah, and incentives, I think, should go beyond, is it V8?
The cars.
Yeah.
The huge
That are
oil.
difficult to maintain.
I know,
And
yeah.
the whole-
At some point, it
The
was
oil
like,
guzzling 4x4s.
Yeah.
Okay, those are interesting points, and I'm hoping the people who are managing these institutions are listening, including policymakers. Although I'd like to just quickly ask: so you think prosecution is not the answer? You know, the
No.
carrot and the stick. This is something you don't think. The stick is not something you
because
think would work.
think about it this way. If we say it's persecution, yeah, you probably get the head of institution and take them through.
Can I interrupt?
By that time, their family is abroad, everybody's abroad, and there's just this person. So how much are you really gaining? Yeah.
And you're spending on them taxpayers' money to put this person in prison and so forth and so on.
So
please, can we move to the next topic?
No, I just wanted to understand whether Banner meant persecution or prosecution,
She
or
meant
both, because both are applicable.
Both applicable. When you're prosecuted, you're actually being persecuted. You know,
Not all the time.
Yeah.
But quite often.
Okay, so please keep the comments coming. We are now going to public restructuring. This is something that happened before in 2014. It's not the first time it's happening. It's now happening again in 2020 amidst a pandemic. So it's a bit interesting because it's a bit rough for the people who are being laid off. So this is a move. The Ministry of Public Service and Labour has said is to improve service delivery. So there's a general overhaul on the public sector. This has resulted in 483 district staff jobs across the country that have so far been rendered redundant. At sector level, around 416 public servants were laid off again across the country. So the question is really, what are your thoughts on this move from the Ministry of Public Service and Labour in terms of saying, it's time for a major overhaul. It's time to really improve the public service sector. Some institutions will be scrapped, some will be merged, some will be modified. There's criteria in people's jobs, civil servants, in terms of duplication. If you find two people who have the same jobs, or two agencies or two ministries doing the same thing, it's a sort of cleanup, I would think. Quick first question, what are your thoughts on this? Second question, what do you think government needs to do in terms of the people that are being laid off, in terms of upskilling or reskilling them? Because, like I said, we're in the midst of a pandemic, so all these people who are laid off, their families, what's the plan for them? But just generally speaking, what are your thoughts on the public service restructuring process that's happening right now? Charles, I'll start off with you.
First of all, one of the things that I'm extremely impressed about Rwanda over time is fairness. They'll be due whenever people are rendered redundant, they are compensated. The fairness of the compensation is it is subjective, but they are compensated, and they are compensated according to the provisions of the law. So I think that's not in question. You know that if you leave a job, you'll be paid X amount, and that's the due process. No one ever wants to lose a job. No one. Believe you me, I run a business. The most difficult decision is to lay someone off. That's number one. Number two, we operate and live in a country that is regarded as one of the most efficient public service setups in Africa, if not in the world, and we give credit where it's due, really. The other day I got a phone call from somebody who works for Gasabo district and said, your dossier is here, how come you've not yet come to pick it? It's really unheard of. So anything that is in the line of improving efficiency, I'll be hats off for it. So on that one, my position is that it's extremely unfortunate. especially because of the bigger picture, because a bigger workforce means more people spending, more people, the multiplier effect of the government civil service is very huge. So it's a huge loss for people. But I belong to a political party. I don't know about the two of you. I'm an ardent RPF, and one of the songs that we sing is Musijali Chama Itapanga. There's always a plan, and the plan has always been good to that extent. But I don't want to be very just a sort of rejoined on that. Is that all the time, when we've had massive changes in public service, there have been beneficiaries. And I'll give you 2 examples. There's a time when the government of Rwanda resorted to doing away with government cars. The project was called Charroi Zero. Charroi Zero is a French phrase that I'll loosely translate to English as zero fleet. All the drivers, all if not all, were encouraged to form associations, and those same associations went and became drivers and offered the services to their respective institutions, and they were kept in employment. A little lower down the caliber, messengers, drivers, cleaners went into cleaning companies and they offered services. And when it came to the bidding process, they were given preferential rates to be retained. So we work for a government that listens. We work in a system that listens. I am a little bit bothered, but I'm not really concerned as much because I know there is a plan.
There's a plan.
Yes.
I like your reference to the song, the RPF song. Berna, what's your take on this?
I think what's happening in the public sector has already happened in the private sector, and it's continuing. It was inevitable because part of the bigger lesson from the pandemic is around efficiencies. When you send people home for 3 months plus, then eventually it becomes clear who you need at work and who you don't. Yeah, and we also know for a very long time the government has been investing heavily in ICT, and as we know, some of the jobs will actually become obsolete, because of IT systems. Then we also have to wake up to the reality that we have more young people entering the job market. There's need for space, unfortunately. This means some people have to give way because sometimes what you see in public service, someone says, they've had this job for 15, 20 years. And of course, everything around them is changing, except that they still probably have the same contract and the same, payment. Yeah, so I feel that the restructuring is within that light. Efficiency is IT and also ensuring that you have the right people in the right places. I think what will be really important is the compensation, the packages. If you're sending someone home early, then just make sure that you give them what is required to probably start, a new life, and perhaps also not wait too long, because many of them already are nervous for a month or so, and they are not sure how it's going to be. So if the process can be, made faster, a bit of communication around this is what it will look like, so that people begin looking elsewhere. Otherwise, it would be quite unfortunate.
Not a last-minute sort of thing.
Yes. Because I think there's general communication that was sent around, and now people are just panicking, and they don't know if I'm staying or I'm going. Yeah. So a bit of help around what the process will be like and when it will actually happen, so that people can start planning, BC.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just want us to read a tweet. These are some tweets that are coming in. This is a tweet on this particular topic. And this is a tweet from Mhano Gilles, who says that I appreciate the effort that Rwanda Labour puts in improving public service delivery. I suggest that there should be an association of laid-off civil servants which will help them to get quick access on financial aid so they can make a living after the job. So just very quickly on that, Charles said, Brenna, what do you think about, sort of associations in terms of, not depending on government so much, but putting themselves together and finding a way to, reapply their skills in other sectors?
Absolutely. I think it's, personally, I think it's a good initiative, but to what we were speaking to earlier about incentives, already you would expect that if you have a record in public service, maybe you should earn a point somewhere that allows you, if you leave public service, for instance, and you can still be productive, it puts you at an advantage, somewhere, somehow. I know it's possible, because your experience and work should be able to help you. So someone should come up with
some sort of system
that allows you, if you've worked in public service maybe for 5 years or 10 years and you have a clean sheet, there should be a way of rewarding you for that, even after you have left public service, beyond the pension, of course.
I want to make a comment on that. And my biggest problem with the army is all the previous army chiefs have been my friends. And I have tried my level best to join the army. I hope General Kazura is on this show and he's or watching or his cronies, and he'll probably give me a chance, because I am a huge admirer of the army, especially in that regard. The army has a very good way of answering what Mano has just said. Ex-servicemen, abled and disabled, give service to the army and its business organs in their different ways. That way, inadvertently, they serve the state and remain not only relevant, but motivated.
And appreciated.
And yes, today, the most reliable people you will find in the surveying sector will be soldiers. Today, one of the most profitable companies will be run by soldiers. Today, the most beautiful office building in Rwanda has been built by soldiers. So where am I going with this conversation? People who are out of the system are still extremely relevant, in as long as they are encouraged to work within a very organized environment. The reserve force, you look at Rugari meat packers, and we can give quite a number of examples. But the bigger point I'm raising is, yes, if somebody has been in a position where they have been relevant to whatever they have been for years, they are most likely to serve better if they have been let go for reasons of age, disability, and so on and so forth. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, Bana and Diana. Yes, we can.
Yeah, and also the fact that sometimes, for instance, someone may be laid off and maybe they are 60, but they still have children who have to go to school. Can we find a way of subsidizing that cost, so that at least even if they leave office, their children can still go to school and afford.
I like both your points. So an element of former civil servants who've been laid off and without, it's something that they had no choice over. If there's a sort of subsidization to people who are still supporting families, especially of school-going age. And Charles, you're saying borrowing a leaf from, the military structure in how it still takes care of its own. If government can do that in terms of still finding a way to place these people in different. It's not a favor, yes.
Yes.
Placing these people in different areas, even after the work is done. Thank you for that. We'll keep on going to our social media feed. But before we do, I want us to now just talk about the resumption of Car-Free Day. How often do the two of you utilize Car-Free Day? That happens twice a month.
I don't do Car-Free Day. I'm not a fan of Car-Free Day. I think it's a waste of time.
Wow.
I don't even do group walks. I don't do group runs.
Wow.
I don't believe. I think Car-Free Day is a terrible thing. But I want to talk about Car-Free Day in the context of COVID and resumption of activities.
Yeah. But Charles, I'm sorry, you can't have such a loaded statement, a loaded comment, and we don't have enough time. And then you're just going to talk about, I know we are talking about resumption of activities, such as Car-Free Day. Of course, we will talk about others.
Because
can you be succinct and brief as possible as to why you do not believe into something that benefits hundreds of Kigali residents and their children and their
pets?
We
don't know that yet.
But no. But that's because it's a personal opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. Just
right.
go to
it's a personal
opinion.
You're entitled to your opinion.
I belong to a group of old-time cricketers.
Yeah.
And they're always pushing me to go into group walks. My tennis club is always wondering why I don't go into their group runs. But that's just me.
Okay.
It's just a personal opinion.
Okay.
But I want to say it in regards to resumption of activities, and I'm sure that's why you brought that up,
Yes,
Diana.
of course.
If the government of Rwanda has said we can go to the streets and run
together,
cycle, walk in numbers, that's a very loud statement.
Okay.
That is.
Yes. So number 2 is let them relax the over-policing of the other things that are done in numbers, inclusive of socializing at weddings, at parties, bars, nightclubs, and so churches, all the other gatherings. They have led by example. That is why I'm waiting for the next cabinet meeting.
Okay, absolutely. I hear your point. A lot of hyperbole from Charles today, this evening.
I will not forget.
Exactly, no, but it is a true statement. Of course, Car-Free Day is happening with respect to COVID-19 guidelines. There's a mask before and after sports. There's social distancing. You're not running together. The social, and then they're not doing the testing that they did en masse for people. That has been stopped. But it's just allowing people to, distress and walk around. You're cooped up in your house the whole day, and I think they thought, COVID-19 is about health. Let's, have a social activity that's open to health.
Jog after every beer in a bar.
Barna, what's your take on this? Charles said it's a loud statement. Indeed it is.
Yeah, it is. But I think Charles shouldn't just look at Car-Free Day as just a sports event. I think it's more than that. I personally feel that it's also part of instilling confidence, within the population. And again, I would want to imagine that every step has been guided by science and research. So I would not challenge the decision, because so far what we've seen, everything is done based on, science and research. But I feel that...
and PR.
I don't know about that, Charles. But I feel that we need to do more around the Car-Free Day. Street food, for instance. Can we add street food to Car-Free Day?
For every 500 calories you burn,
yes.
Add 200.
I mean, it could be someone selling just fruits, but let's add some light to the Car-Free Day. Have these people, have
you're contributing to the economy. One of my pet, I don't think the right phrasing is pet peeves, but one of my strongest recommendations or, understandings on how we can capitalize and utilize this space, this Car-Free Day, all the streets, especially in the car-free zone area, bring up different things to do with, curio shops that are constantly there. Street food. I don't know why the policy or regulatory...
To sell water.
Exactly. Some of these things. I really hope this is something we can start implementing. And I hope this pandemic will then teach us how to make sure we respect guidelines in terms of health in implementing such services. Street food is something that's done all over across the world and in parts of Africa, in coffee zones, on coffee days. I don't see why one shouldn't be able to do this.
The street food, and then the street entertainment.
Exactly.
All that could be income generating.
It is definitely income generating.
Yeah, so I don't know why that hasn't happened.
And I think the city of Kigali, it adds to the liveliness of the city that they're trying to make lively.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. And some people have been saying that, they should reopen cinemas, use social distance. If you can social distance in churches or on a bus, reopen the cinemas and some of these social activities. So I think Car Free Day, the reopening of it has made the public think or question and ask, then can we also have this? Can we have that? I don't know if it's in the best interests of government to get so many of these questions, but like you said, Charles, this is it's a loud statement.
Very loud statement. Very loud statement.
Yeah.
The mayor of Kigali City was running the streets without a mask. I don't know whether that would happen to a villager in Jikongoro who is just going about his usual run. It's a very loud statement.
Yeah. We need to start looking at these things. We have a couple of tweets that I want us to read out, and the first tweet is just basically on the information that we've been sharing between Brenna, myself, and I. Is from Vivienne, who says researchers need to see if there's no correlation between public service restructuring, skills management in public service, government expenditures, and PACS hearings or Office of the Auditor General's findings. Maybe there is something. So he's saying there needs to be a correlation between the three needs to be studied. We also have a tweet coming in on the topic we've just discussed on Car Free Day from Mhano, who states that I suggest that the Ministry of Health, Rwanda Health, must analyze if the opening of the Car Free Day has led to a rise of new cases. If not, I think this is an opportunity to open other public activities. So spot on to what Charles and Brenna have been saying, and we will see the way Rwanda, the government and stakeholders, implementing partners, law enforcement have been handling this pandemic has been really factual and science-based, but also taking into consideration the economy and the livelihoods of Rwandan citizens. So one thing I like also is that this period has shown me that our authorities listen. They listen to suggestions, comments, and ideas. So I hope this is something that we'll be looking at. Last tweet for night is from Mike Busa, who states that it's not necessarily about how much you earn as a civil servant, it's about the integrity of the person and the recruiter. We need to understand the concept of living within our means, not living to show off or copy others. Get some inspiration from Rwanda Defense Force. Another fan of the military. I agree with you, Mike and Charlie. Very quick closing remarks as we come to the end of the show regarding public restructuring, regarding Car Free Day and resumption of activities, as well as the government expenditure, how this can be bettered in the future, and when the auditor or the Office of the Auditor General can finally have teeth. I feel bad for him because this is one person who year in, year out brings these dismal figures, but nothing really happens. Closing remarks in general, Brenna?
I feel that the time has come for us to really have a very competitive public sector, and that is in terms of recruitment. It should be based on skills, because the more we see, young people aspire to join, for instance, the corporate world, the big five, we should have that for the public service. And it happens somewhere in some parts of the world, so it can be done, and that's part of that goes to improving the incentives and making sure that you have the right people in the right places.
Absolutely. Yeah. Charles, closing remarks?
We have a huge opportunity to make a big difference in our public sector. Governance, value for money. Let value for money not be seen on one side. If I have saved the government a huge sum, do not judge me as a leader on having turned a quarter of a blind eye on another procedure. So let's have business brains in the way we look at this, public service. But along the same breadth, also, I think let's have people in positions of responsibility, especially those in money-making government business enterprises. I think that's what they call government business enterprises. They need to be run by business people, not bureaucrats.
Absolutely.
Again, competence.
Competence. This is what you've been saying. I hope next time, Charles, we can discuss your complete and utter dislike of car-free day, car-free zone on national TV. That's something worth looking into and seeing what the rest of, what the public in general thinks. But thank you very much, Charles. Great to have you on Burning Edition as always. Same to you, Brenna. Great to have you on Burning Issues Edition. To our viewers, thank you for tuning in. Keep the comments coming using #TheSquareRW. Thank you for tuning in, giving us your ideas on the content that actually built tonight's show. Thank you very much for that. And to our partners, Uzi Collections and Bourbon Coffee, thank you for always supporting The Square. Have a good night and see you again next week. Thank you.